morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. Jumping into another lesson. Shorter video today. This is just a recap lesson. We are done factoring. We know our four methods and we are good to go. So what we're going to look at today is, well, how do I approach a factoring question? Now that I have all these methods in my back pocket, how do I go about using them? And that's what we're going to do today. So we'll have a little review today on factoring. We'll have our weekly assignment on all of factoring tomorrow. And then next week, Monday, we're going to review all of polynomials, the multiplying and the factoring, the add, subtract, everything all together. And Tuesday is our first kind of unit evaluation, our first unit summative. So that'll be, it's kind of like a unit exam, but obviously not because we're online and it's a little different. So it'll just be a longer assignment. So that's it for the unit. We're really wrapping this one up and then we'll be on to the next thing. For now, let's jump into some factoring review. And here we are, page 373 with some factoring review. And we're going to jump right in. So the first thing we're going to do is actually go through this flow chart, kind of guidelines for factoring of, as we know these methods, kind of approaching a question with the best possible strategy. So I'll read through and then we'll talk about the flow chart. So it says, look for a common factor. If there is one, take it out. Always. Okay, no matter what you're doing, no matter what it looks like, always, 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 always look for the GCF. I feel like I stress that a lot. And I feel like we know that one. Okay. If there is a binomial expression, look for a difference of squares. Yeah, if I only have two terms, I'm hoping it's a difference of squares. Otherwise, I'm pretty much done. Okay. If it's a trinomial, look for factoring by inspection. So what I'm looking for there is there's no a value. It's just 1x squared, not a, bigger a value. Look for inspection. Okay. Where I just look for my magic combo and jump right to the answer. If I do have an a value, look to factor by decomp. Okay, so I'm looking to factor by decomposition, and then always looking for perfect square trinomials of maybe there's a better way to write my answer. And then if it's four terms, well, then the only way I know how to factor is grouping. I've already taken out the GCF, and then I look to factor by grouping. And at the very end, it says always look to factor further. So maybe I can keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. So here it is in the flow chart. Look for a common factor. If I have a binomial, it's really only difference of squares is the only option. If it's a trinomial, maybe I do inspection, maybe I do decomp. And if it's four terms, I have to try grouping. And always, always, always look. So this is huge. This is a great reference. As you're doing the homework, you can jump back to this, this flow chart, and it'll really help you out. Okay, so we're going to jump into the next page. I think there's only 5 examples. That's it for the lesson, so it'll be a really short one. So we jump there. What I'm going to say is I actually want you to pause and try all 5 ahead of me. And they're a little bit trickier. So we'll see what we can do. But yeah, go ahead and try these ahead of me. And then I'll run through all of the answers with some detail after that.
Show starts in 8 minutes. Yum, yum.
Okay, I'm going to jump in and factor these 5 questions. Hopefully you're able to do them ahead of me. I'm going to look at kind of all 5 and talk through my process and how I decided what to do and how I ultimately got to my answers. So first one, A, 9x squared minus 36. Well, first thing, no matter what, is look for a GCF. And I have one. Both of those terms are divisible by 9. So I would get 9 times x squared minus 4, where I have right now 2 factors. 9 is a factor, and x squared minus 4 is a factor. And then I look at this and I say, hey, that can go even further because that's a binomial. And a binomial can be factors if it's difference of squares. And it is. X squared is a perfect square and 4 is a perfect square. And I can factor that to x minus 2, x plus 2. And there is my fully factored answer. 9, x minus 2, x plus 2. So you have 3 factors. Here's a factor, here's a factor, here's a factor. Okay, this all multiplies out, and you actually get 9x squared minus 36. Okay, B, x squared minus 16x minus 36. Well, I always look for a GCF. I don't have one. Okay, there's no common factor, but that's okay. Well, then I look and I say, hey, there's no a value. It's just x squared. So really, all I need to do is find my magic combo of multiply to the constant, negative 36, add to the middle, negative 16, Okay. And if I find those numbers, I have my factors. Okay. Multiply to negative 36. Multiply to negative 36, add to negative 16. Well, that would be negative 18 and positive 2. Okay, which allows me to jump right to my answer, x minus 18 and x plus 2. Those are my two factors. X minus 18 is a factor, x plus 2 is a factor. So whenever I have just a coefficient of 1, it's really easy to factor. I look for my magic combo and I'm pretty much done. Okay, let's go to C, negative 8x squared plus 26x plus 15. Okay, this is a bit of a doozy, but ultimately I'll be able to handle it. Okay, ultimately I'll be able to handle it. So I have negative 8x squared, 26. Okay, there's no common factor. I always look for my common factor. I don't have one. That's okay. I'm going to have to do decomp. So I look for my magic combo. Multiply. This is going to be a big one. Okay, negative 8 times 15, which is 120. Negative 120. Add to the middle, 26. Okay. And it's not going to be as hard as you think to find these two numbers. Okay. Because if there's a negative answer, it means one of them was negative and one of them was not. One of them was positive. And if I'm trying to add to 26, I'm just going to start with things that are really close to 26 and go from there. So maybe I try, right, 27 times negative 1. Well, that adds to negative 6, 20, or that adds to 26. No, it doesn't multiply. Okay, maybe I go one higher, 28 times negative 2. And that would give me negative 54, so that's no good. But I'm just throwing out these combos that add to 26. Go one bigger, 29 times negative 3. 29 times negative 3 is 29 times 3. 87, negative 87. And then I go one further and I go, hey, 30 times negative 4 absolutely equals negative 120. So there's my magic combo. Absolutely. Now, in terms of decomp, I can break apart the 26x. Minus 4x plus 30x. Still the same thing. I'm just writing it in a more convenient way. And I can roll through the whole decomp process now. Group these first two terms, group the second two terms. Let's take out some common factors. First term, I could take out a negative 4x. Okay, so I'm dividing out the negative, and I get left with 2x plus 1. Negative 4x divided by negative 4x would be plus 1. In the next group, 30x plus 15, I could factor out a positive, so plus 15. Positive 15, and you get left with 2x plus 1. And the decomp worked, because my term in the brackets is the same. That is now my GCF. I can pull that out. 2x plus 1, and I get left with a negative 4x plus 15. Fantastic. Two factors. 2x plus 1 would be one of your factors. Negative 4x plus 15 would be one of your factors. Those two things multiply together to get this. Okay, so there you go. There's A, B, and C. And now let's go to the bottom. We only got two more left, and that'll be it for today. So let's go ahead and try them. Okay, 24x squared minus 30x plus 36 minus 45. This is a weird question. You might have done this a different way, and that's totally fine. Maybe before we even factor, maybe you just notice minus 30x plus 36x. Why don't we just combine those like terms? Yeah, if I was actually doing this question, I would simplify it first. But just for the question's sake, let's leave it how it is. They wanted to set you up with 4 terms, so let's treat it as 4 terms. I always look for a GCF first, so that's what I'll do. 24, 30, 36, and 45 all can be factored with a 3. Those are all divisible by 3. And you'd get left with 8x squared minus 10x plus 12x minus 15. Okay, so still awkward in the middle because I would normally just combine those terms, but whatever. It's got 4 terms in it. The only way I know how to factor with 4 terms is grouping. Okay, so that's if I ever have 4 terms, I can always do grouping. I don't have to worry when I get 4 terms because I can always group. So I've got the factor of 3 out front. Between 8x squared minus 10x, I could factor out a 2x, and I'd be left with 4x minus 5. Plus, I could factor out a 3, and you get 4x minus 5. So inside this big bracket, I can do grouping, which is kind of similar to the decomp. And I actually get my factored answer. 3, you factor out the 4x minus 5, and you get left with a 2x and a plus 3. There we go. Those are my 3 factors. 3, 4x minus 5, 2x plus 3 would all multiply out to this. And then my middle term is a little awkward, but ultimately we're okay. All right, so if I had simplified it first and then I would have got the same answer. This kind of really what they did is they started the decomp process for us is kind of how that one worked. But I always remember to take my common factor first. Okay, 3 minus 3x squared minus 36x to the 4. Okay, well, it's a little awkward and it's kind of written maybe backwards of how I would normally go, but that's okay. All right, I look at those things and what I see is a common factor of 3. And then I get 1 minus x squared minus 12x to the 4. Okay. And then I look at that and I say, well, it's really awkward. It's kind of written the opposite way of how I normally do. And especially the power of 4, I normally deal with just x squared, not x to the 4. Well, whenever we have something like this, let's try to do decomp. Okay, let's try to break this thing up and see if decomp works for us. So I'm going to multiply 2. 1 times negative 12 would be negative 12. And I'm going to add to the middle term of negative 1. And those numbers are going to be negative 4 and 3. Multiplies negative 12, yep, adds to negative 1. Okay, well, let's break apart that middle term. Instead of saying minus x squared, let's say minus 4x squared plus 3x squared. And then I've got my minus 12x to the 4 on the end. So I'm decomposing the middle. I'm good to go. Okay, well, if every time I do decomp, I then look to group, because now I have 4 terms and I can look at factor the first 2, factor the second 2. So I've got my common factor of 3. 1 minus 4x squared, that one's a little awkward. It has no common factor. The biggest thing you could divide out would be a 1. 1 minus 4x squared. The next term, 3x squared minus 12x to the 4, I could factor out a positive 3x squared. And I get left with 1 minus 4x squared. Okay, so those are my 2 groups. I factored this group and I factored this group. Well, now it worked because I have the same bracket, 1 minus 4x squared. Okay, equals 3 times 1 minus 4x squared times 1 plus 3x squared. Awesome. I factored it out. I did the perfect common factor. Then I did decomp to kind of figure out how it would work. And then now I'm left with this. And I think a lot of people would probably stop here and you're done factoring, which is really close. I've done a lot of factoring already, but I can actually go a little bit more. 3, you can't factor anymore. 1 plus 3x squared, that's a sum. It's a binomial. I can't do anything. But 1 minus 4x squared actually worked out to be a perfect square. Both terms are a perfect square. That is a difference of squares. So I would say 1 minus 2x, 1 plus 2x. That's factoring. This part I can actually factor. And then the 1 plus 3x squared is already fully factored. So maybe just a little bit more of a factoring question than you might have thought. I kind of had to do 3 different levels of factoring, but ultimately I got my answer. So there you go. That's 5 factoring questions ranging from what I'd say is pretty easy to this last one, which is really, really tough. But we're good to go. So what I'm going to leave you with is some homework. Page 374, 1 and 2, all of the questions. That'll be a really solid way to go through factoring and practice some variety of factoring questions. Okay, and then on page 383, there's the practice test for factoring. Just the multiple choice. I want you to do 1 to 5 and 15. And then I would tell you to just skip the rest and don't even bother looking at them. So really, we have 4 methods of factoring, and we want to be really, really confident in those 4 methods. And that's what we're going to do on the assignment tomorrow. Is I'm going to give you 10 questions, and it's just going to be about factoring of can you factor these things. So as always, ask me questions and try the homework, set up appointments, all of that. And that'll be it for this one. And that is it for this one, folks. So make sure you do the homework, make sure you do the practice. And you could go back, right? You could go back to the old lessons and learn about greatest common factor again, learn about inspection again, learn about difference of squares again, learn about decomp again. Those are our 4 methods. And I need to know those for the assignment tomorrow and then ultimately for the kind of unit assignment on Tuesday. So go back, ask lots of questions, and we'll go from there. Have a fantastic day. Like, subscribe, smash. Oh, you already said like. Smash the like button. Whatever. Have a fantastic day.